All right, everyone, we are live. We have Coach Sam joining us today on the community conversation. Sam, welcome. Thanks so much for being on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so excited. I listen to it every week, so I'm pumped to kind of talk too.
It's Sam Hally, not Sam Russo. So that's the first thing is you now have officially legally changed your name. You got married in like the COVID times and all that sort of stuff. So instead of kicking things off like we normally do with the journey, I just had the idea. Why don't we talk a little bit about that? What was it like getting married and now being married during COVID and that whole thing and how that all went down?
That's a good question. So it's interesting. So when COVID hit, we knew by probably end of April that we were going to change it. I was like, absolutely not. And I think everybody knows at this point, I am crazy about COVID. Like we're not getting married. We're not putting everybody in that position to even make the call to come to our weddings. So by May, we had already sent out, change the date. So we knew that we were changing it and we just were going to do a small ceremony, which if I'm being completely honest, I wanted to do in the first place, but I know my family wants the big wedding and the whole 9 yards. So we just did a small ceremony in October. And to be honest, nothing has changed in my life in terms of that. Matt and I were already living together and we've been together for over 8 years. So it's not much has changed. And but we do get to do the party in October. So we get to have the big actual celebration with all our family and friends, which we're super excited for. But honestly, it's really stressful, even though we've already been married.
So you did this small ceremony in October of 2020, but now it's basically a year, and now you're doing the big kind of
the big party, and it took me almost that whole time to change my name.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it's taken some time, but I know that process. Well, I don't know personally, but I know Erin had to go through the process, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. So,
yeah,
officially, congratulations to changing your name and doing all that stuff. And as a pain in the butt. All right, so now that we check that off, I would love for you to kind of talk about your journey into fitness. And I know your background, and a lot of folks probably listening to this, you coach a lot of the morning classes. You've been just all in on the community here at Prototype, and people know you very well that you coach, but not everyone that might be listening to this knows you. That they might be in the evening or whatever, they might be even new. So would love to hear from you, your journey. How did you find CrossFit? What's your fitness background, fitness journey? Why did you get into it? Let's start there and just unload.
All right, I can feel free to cut me off at any point in time. But the short version of this is when I was growing up, I did just about every sport under the sun. My dad wanted boys, he got 3 girls. We ended up doing literally every sport we could possibly get into. And so I started off with the basics, soccer, gymnastics, and then I just started adding in field hockey and lacrosse and swimming and diving. I think I did just about everything except for softball. And then by the time I got to high school, I really was honed in. I was just doing lacrosse and then swimming and diving. And then I ended up diving in college. And so fitness has just been a generally very big part of my life of I was always running from one sports practice to the next. And I never thought anything of it. It was just sports all day, every day. And then I went off to college and I dove in college for 4 years. And post college, then I launched into the nutrition side. That's what I studied in school. But I was doing my dietetic internship and I didn't have as much time to work out. And then I ended up going to grad school. And at that point, while I was in grad school, I was also coaching diving full time. And so I was coaching sports, but again, I didn't set aside time for myself to do it. So while I was in grad school and coaching, I ended up on a whim entering a raffle and won CrossFit as a prize. And so I walked through the doors. I did it was on ramp is what they called it there, our virtuosity. And I never looked back. I remember walking in that first day and there was a girl on a rower next to me and she was a former swimmer and she was like, oh my gosh, it's the best thing I ever did. You're going to love it. And she was right. And I did. And I have done CrossFit ever since. And then shortly after that, I ended up going into coaching CrossFit. And then here I am. I mean, I've been a bunch of different places. I've traveled up and down the entire East Coast, but now I'm here working in Westboro and I absolutely love it.
A couple things I would love to hear from the timeline perspective. So you, after high school, 4 years,
Mhm.
diving,
Yeah.
internship, grad school,
Mhm.
raffle, CrossFit. So what was like that? When did you start doing CrossFit? What was that year?
Yeah. So my college years were 2011 to 2015. I graduated undergrad in 2015. And then to be a dietitian, you have to do a year long, like 1,200 hours of like supervised practice. And so like you take some graduate courses and then you're basically like working 40 hours a week. But it's like educational in a bunch of different settings. So I did that for the year through 2016. And then 2016 through 2018 was when I was in grad school. And it was like early on, I think, actually might have been like May of 2017 is when I joined CrossFit for the first time. And then I was like coaching before I graduated in 2018.
Awesome. What made you get into like coaching? Why, like what? Well, first, before I even ask you that question, because it's probably related, is like, what was the thing that hooked you into CrossFit? You mentioned that you did a class, you met someone that like had a background that you did that did diving, said you're gonna love it, and then you loved it. Like, what was the draw? Like, what hooked you in?
It's funny because I mentioned this to someone last week in class. I feel like CrossFit is like team sports, but only the fun part of it. It's like you don't have to be particularly good. Like there's no pressure of competition. You just like get to show up. Someone tells you exactly what to do. It's big, like the it focuses around like the community and the social aspect. That's a big piece for me, is like knowing that every time I come to the gym, I'm going to see people I enjoy being around, and I like get to talk to my friends every single day. And so I just like fell in love. Like I tried to convince my entire family to do CrossFit, and they're like, Sam, chill out. You're turning into one of those crazy CrossFit people.
Mhm.
But I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's like, remember when we played soccer and we were 8 years old and like we just got to run around and like chase the ball and no one was any good at it, but it was fun. Like that's what CrossFit feels like every single day. So that's why I love it. I don't know. Like I couldn't do anything else, I don't think.
I I've never heard anyone describe that the way you just described it with as much passion as you described it. But what you said was, I think this is what you said. I feel like CrossFit is the teams is a team sport, but only the fun parts.
Yeah.
What an awesome way to talk about that. I never even thought of it like that. I completely agree with you. You're in like a team environment. You're not one-on-one with yourself. Well, I guess you are one-on-one with yourself, but you're in a team environment and it's all the fun stuff, the camaraderie. You don't need to necessarily be good. There's no, starting team and, bench team. It's just everyone gets to do it and participate and work hard and all that sort of stuff. I totally understand that. What an awesome way to put that. So you got hooked into it. And then what drew you to like the coaching side of things? Because not everyone does
Oh, yeah.
CrossFit and wants to become a CrossFit coach, right?
I totally didn't even get to that part yet. Yeah. So it's interesting. So like I was like immediately hooked, like I said. And so at the time, I had done it for probably like 6 months, and the gym I was like going to was like hiring new coaches. And so I had a long conversation with one of the owners one day, and I was like, honestly, I love this place. I love everything about it. I'm like totally bought in. I coach for a living right now. Like this is what I do. It's diving, so it's like something I'm more well versed in. Um, but like I know you're looking for coaches. Like, can I learn to coach? And so then they kind of put me through this little internship program there, where they taught me like the ins and outs of coaching. I did a lot of shadowing, just like Jack's been doing. I was at classes, like waking up. I already knew the members, so it's just like learning how to coach CrossFit. And so a couple of months of that, and then I like jumped right into coaching classes. And so I had to leave there because I moved out. Like once I finished grad school, I moved up here to Mass. And then I like immediately found another gym, and I was working there for a while, and then that shut during COVID. And then Matt and I moved not near Boston. And so then I ended up here. And honestly, this is my favorite of all the gyms I've been at, like by far. This is such a great.
Oh, you're not just saying that because you're talking to me,
No, I'm
right?
not just saying that. It's so great. Plus, like it feels like home. Like Matt's from Westboro. Like Matt and Aaron went to school together. This is like kind of home. I don't know if everybody knows that, but yes, my
That's it.
husband and Mike's wife went to school together. They graduated. They did not talk to each other. Aaron was way too cool for Matt.
I bet you she would disagree with that, but yeah, that's like one of those small world things. It's
Mhm.
like totally random. And I feel like there was another small world thing because something to do with like Connecticut, and there was someone that like Aaron
Oh yeah,
knew.
I used to dive with Aaron's cousin Kelsey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how random is that? It's like just totally random. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's just the way life is though. But yeah, that's so you apply to a gym in Westboro, which did you know at the time your husband was from Westboro, or did you just like, oh yeah, I've got this job in Westboro? You're like, oh, I'm from Westboro.
Yeah. No, I had driven by it. My in-laws live like 2 miles down the road. So I'd driven by it a couple times and tried to convince him to drop in when we visited for holidays, which obviously didn't happen. But I was like, oh, I know where that is. I've seen that before.
It's awesome. And so you kind of went down the coaching route because you're so passionate about it, but you also have this like nutrition background, which you've been
Mhm.
using a lot at Prototype.
Mhm.
And like the knowledge you have taken from like from college and then like applied it into your like shadowing internship while you're getting your degree. Like you were working, if I remember correctly, like you were working within that in that capacity, dietetics, working with like special populations and that sort of thing. Is that right? Like what's that been like, I guess, kind of taking that knowledge and now using it to help people, just just general population, opposed to
Mhm.
like working in more of like were you working in clinical setting? I forgot.
Yeah, so it's kind of confusing. So I've worked in a bunch of different settings. The way the dietetic internship works is like you're not allowed to become a dietitian until you work with different parts of the population. So you have to do a rotation like in a community setting, so like at a WIC, which is like women, infants, children. It's similar to like a food stamp program, but it's only for that subset of the population. And so like they come in, they get like vouchers, and then they can purchase food. Women's, infants, and children are the population. You have to do a setting, working with students. I did a rotation in a long-term care center, so I like worked with the elderly population. I did like a big chunk of my internship in the hospital, like in a clinical setting. It's like working on different units and floors in there. And then I also worked in a private practice where I like did part of my internship, but then I also ended up working there. So it was honestly kind of similar to this, the private practice of like I saw patients that like would come in to see us. We called it patients instead of clients, but same kind of concept is what I do here. So I've kind of seen it all. And so obviously nutrition's what I love to do. I went to school for it for a lot of years, and like I'm very happy doing it. And so I think nutrition is important, and like I think more important, and hopefully more people are seeing that as like preventative medicine of like right now the healthcare system really caters to people when they're sick. Like you go to the hospital when you're sick. Like I see it so many times. People don't even go for their yearly physical because they're like, oh, I'm not sick, I don't know, need to go see a doctor. And so I think there's a shift kind of in the medical field of now like let's work preventative medicine, which is exactly what we do here in the fitness world of like um exercising regularly, eating healthy, like making sure to sleep and de-stress and drink water and like do all those things so you don't get to the point of having to be on medication or end up in the hospital. Because medicine is just so much more useful if you use it as a preventative measure as opposed to like a reactive measure.
Mm, it's so important. Like the notion that, and you're seeing it, with some like benefits and different things that companies are doing, insurance companies, or even like just companies in general, to put a bigger emphasis on health, fitness, wellness, whatever you want to refer to it as that preventative maintenance or preventative thing, so you don't end up on that like sickness side. And I don't know if you remember like in talking about CrossFit, and like the level 1 talks about like the sickness, wellness, fitness continuum.
Mhm.
Do you remember that,
Yeah.
and like what that looks like? I can explain it, but if you want to explain it to like what to everyone
Sure,
listening,
why
they might
not?
not be aware of it. Yeah.
It's like a fuel gauge in the car. So there's like the empty side is sickness, there's like the middle, which is wellness, and then the full is fitness. And so the goal is to be always in fitness. So even if you do like acquire some illness, right? So like if you come down with COVID, right, it doesn't bring you to sickness, that just brings you to wellness, right? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, the
So you're
further
right
along
in the middle.
the continuum, yeah, you got it.
Exactly. And that way, like you're still in like a healthy state. Um, but it's not bringing you all the way down to like where you're going to be hospitalized. And obviously like COVID doesn't exactly work like that, but like that's just an example, right? If you come down with any illness, like you want to be closer to fitness, but even if something does happen, you're not necessarily in direct sickness.
Mhm. Yeah, it's like it's a very simplistic or a simple way to take this complicated idea or process of all these things and kind of put it into this continuum that like, listen, like CrossFit, like we want to strive for fitness. We want to strive for better, better blood pressure than what, that 120/80. We want better than that. We want better than the normal or healthy triglycerides. We want better than just the normal range BMI body fat percentage. Like the further you're on the fitness side, the harder it is to move towards the sickness side. And like from your background in working in clinical settings and seeing people that are like, that are sick and like need to like work on their health like now, or it's like, they're going in an even worse direction. COVID, I think, is the biggest, or should be, hopefully, like the silver lining should be a wake-up call for a lot of people. But the hard thing about COVID is that it's a lot of people were isolated and stayed inside and all that sort of stuff as well. And now we're seeing people kind of coming back, wanting to get back into shape because they know how important it is. They just weren't able to do it. So yeah, I always love that, the sickness, wellness, fitness continuum. But let's keep talking about you and on the nutrition side of things. I bet you a lot of people that are listening to this right now are like, oh, I hope Sam gives some good like nutrition tidbits. And I'll throw a little shameless plug in here. Every Thursday, there's a Prototype Nutrition podcast that comes out that you guys should check out if you haven't checked it out, with Sam and John. They talk about all the nutrition stuff. So shout out to Sam and John for putting that together every Thursday. But just like when I had John on here a few months ago, we talked a little bit about nutrition. Let's just talk about that. So like from a dietitian's perspective, you worked in all these different settings. What have you seen just from like, I guess, best bang for your buck? If someone's listening to this right now and they're like, I'd like to take something away from this as it relates to nutrition, like what is your like general guidance? I'm sure you go to like parties and people are like, oh, you're a dietitian. Oh, like, can I eat this? Is this good? Like, you know what I mean? Like, have you, like, I'm sure you've had those those are always fun. What's your like general guidance? And then maybe we can kind of like branch off from there.
Yeah. So the general guidance thing is hard. So by like, I have a lot of strong opinions about nutrition, and I also don't give my strong opinions a lot of times because like I like to give science and evidence-based information. The thing I will say that is pretty much opinion-based, but also based in science, that if anybody is giving you nutrition advice and it is a blanket statement, it is probably wrong. That like, no matter what you see on the internet, if you see that carbs are bad, if you see that you shouldn't eat after 6 p.m., if you see that like eating a handful of cherries is like the best thing for burning fat, anytime you see a blanket statement, it is wrong, don't trust it. And so like I stay away from giving just like super generalized nutrition advice because like every single person needs something different, right? So like if I have someone coming into me that needs to lose weight, like we'll work through what they specifically need. Sometimes I have a client come into me telling me they want to lose weight, and in actuality, like we actually have to work on body image and not on weight loss. Or I have someone coming in and telling me they want to lose weight, and like they're actually like in need of losing a little bit of weight that'll help them like bring down their high blood pressure. But like it's not necessarily like the weight loss that's a challenge. It's like their work is way too stressful. They sleep 4 hours a night. Like there's things other than food that can be changed in someone's life. So I feel like if I'm giving one general piece of nutrition advice, it's like, okay, it's maybe like 3 things. 1, don't trust everything you see on the internet. 2, you need to do what feels best for your body, no matter what. And then 3, come find an expert. Come talk to me or come talk to John, because like we really do know like the ins and outs of nutrition that you're not going to get from like general blanket advice. So I know that's not the exact answer to your question, but like that is my blanket statement advice for everyone.
Those are 3 good pieces of advice. And I feel like the first one, which is don't trust the internet. I feel like you could apply that piece of advice to basically almost anywhere.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, my forearm hurts. Oh, you look up forearm pain on the internet and it's like, you know, forearm cancer. And then you start going into this like, oh my God, I think I have forearm cancer. Dude, you know,
Yeah.
pull the
Like,
muscle,
no,
you're
you
okay.
don't.
You know, more than likely. But I also think the problem is that people, human beings in general, want results, immediate results. And so the idea of let me try this new thing, or let me do this thing that's different that all these people say I should do, insert fad diet, insert, you know, whatever, some sort of strange modality or whatever. If I do that, that will solve my problem.
Yeah.
Right. But the bigger problem is that you don't do anything long enough for it to see if it actually helps your problem.
Right.
Right. And I know that we've talked about before, like the power of like of habits and the power of like changing and doing things for a longer sustainable period of time, and that impact there. So for people that are listening and that might be struggling with something like nutrition or whatever, how do you work with people, or what are the conversations, or maybe some examples of conversations without using anyone's name, of conversations or strategies that you've given people to help them with, you know, with just improving their overall habits of doing things more consistently to get better long-term results?
Yeah, habits is the perfect word. Like habits are the big thing. So if I have someone come in and say, I want to lose weight, which is honestly like in the setting that we're in, probably I would say like 9 times out of 10 why someone's coming in to do nutrition here. And I want people to know that's not all we do. There's much more that we can do. But for the most part, I feel like that's what we've had people come in the past. So like that's the example I'm going to use. If someone comes in and says, I want to lose weight, we're going to like talk about what you eat on a normal day. Like, what does your breakfast look like? What does your lunch look like? What does your dinner look like? Or do you not eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Are you eating like randomly when you have time in the day? Are you like snacking on something as you get in the car to work in the morning, and then you're just kind of like grazing on things all day long? Like, do you have a routine in your day? Because a lot of times what it comes down to is someone might come in to see me to lose weight, but it's like they don't even know what they're eating. You know, and I think like we all do this of like if you're not really like taking inventory of what you're doing in your day, like you don't know what your habits already are. I'm sure we all do little things that are kind of like maybe obscure that we're like, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. And so like the first step is noticing what's going on, and then you can change the habits. So if I have someone who comes in and it's like, I don't eat until 12, like that's like a really long time from the time you wake up until the time you first eat. Like you're probably really hungry by the time it's lunch. So like we got to work on like regaining hunger cues and eating, you know, that you can sense when your body's hungry, so that the first time you're eating is not like, let's just put everything in the mouth because I'm starving. For some people, it's just general overeating or snacking late at night or consuming a lot of alcohol or like calorie dense beverages. So it's like really taking a like myopic view of what the day to day looks like, and then kind of narrowing down small changes that can happen that are like very specific to the individual.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, a lot of things add up, right? And so what's that like? So the idea of like, you know, using like exercise as like I don't want to say an excuse, but it's almost like the reward, right? Like, so I worked out today, I've earned insert like 2,000 calorie, you know, fried onion thing from Outback Steakhouse, right? Like,
yeah, the blooming onion.
Yeah, the blooming onion, which at this point I think everyone in the world knows is like the worst thing for anyone. Just I shouldn't say that because you can eat it, I guess, but if you could fit it in, but I don't really know what any nutritional value to that is.
You probably won't feel great if you eat the whole blooming onion.
Seriously. But like the idea of like that, like the reward, right? Like I feel like that would be something hard to change. Like what is your approach there? Because I would assume some people that are listening are like, oh man, I do that. Like I worked out today, I'm gonna eat like a little bit more, or I'm gonna do this. And so it's like, do they really balance each other out? Like what's been your kind of approach for folks that you may have like or that you work with or talk with when that kind of comes up? Or is that something that you just kind of strategize around? Or I guess it's a very general question I'm asking, but I hope you know what I'm talking about.
No, there's like kind of like two ways to address that. And so like one is like the very like technical, I guess, like analytical way of like, if you are eating, like say you're a bodybuilder, right? And so you have to eat like a very specific amount of macros based off of what you're exercising. So you need to like accurately track what your exercise is and like what your macros will be. So there's like that analytical side of like, if you exercise, you got to fuel appropriately for what you're doing. Now, fitness trackers are like notoriously terrible at telling you like how many calories you actually burn based off like what you're doing. So I don't truly believe in the whole like making up the calories you've burned, because one, I don't like that mentality around food, but two, like it's also not accurate. Also, we're not bodybuilders. No one really needs to worry about that. At least probably the people listening to this podcast. If you want to be a bodybuilder, I don't know, come talk to me and Mike. We'll work that out with you.
Don't talk to me.
But that's like, right, the analytical route of if you work out, you burn this much, you have to eat this many proteins, fats, and carbs to replenish what you burned. The other route is like the more social, emotional, like mental side of it all, which I think is like the hardest part for people when it comes to food. Of like, you could know exactly what to eat for your body, like every specific macro, but at the end of the day, like that's not the hard part. Like the hard part is like dealing with the stress of life, like not having a consistent schedule. Like there's a lot of emotions tied to eating, I think, that people don't realize. And so the second you already go like, oh, I've exercised, now I've like earned my food for the day, or I'm gonna like make up the calories that I've burned, that's already like what's the word I'm looking for? It's like, it's a thought. It's just not, it kind of feeds into diet culture, right? And so like, if you're thinking that way, you're already feeding into diet culture. And so there actually might be like more emotions around food in your life than you thought. So like, I would love to pick that apart and say, well, why do you feel like you have to work out before you eat? Or why do you feel like you have to like do it as a reward, So there's like a lot more tied to eating than just simply eating. So yeah, it's like definitely stuff I like to explore with people, and it's like a very long process. And my clients who are working through this now probably know that I say it all the time. I'm like, it's not easy. It's not easy to just eat. But that's just because we've been taught like the wrong way for so long that eventually we have to kind of shift focus and like ignore all the diet culture, ignore the things on Instagram and TikTok, like ignore the idea of like trying to look a certain way or eat a certain way, and like exercise because it feels good, eat because you enjoy the food, and like really truly just like look at food as because like you want your body to feel as good as possible for as long as possible.
So basically what you're saying is that if you focus on like the process and doing things consistent and focus on the enjoyment of it or the enjoyment of the feeling or whatever, that like the results you want are going to come. If you over focus on the results or get too heavily involved in like diet culture, that can sometimes be a negative. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. It's like once food no longer becomes enjoyable to you, you have to kind of dive down deep and figure out like where that's coming from. Like food should be fun. Food shouldn't be a stressor. Food shouldn't be something you have to earn. Food is just food. It's fuel, it's energy, it's nutrients, like great things in our life. But I feel like more often than not, there's a lot of things out there in the world that kind of like push people away from food just being food.
Yeah, no, Totally understand that. Here's a question for you. In your opinion, like what's the most underrated component to health and fitness? So we've been talking about working out, we've been talking about nutrition. Like in your perspective, like what is the most underrated element of like, I guess the whole idea of like fitness and health and all that sort of stuff?
Stress. Yeah. What's your answer? Would you say the same or would you say something different?
Oh, I don't know. This is not my question. This is my question for you. So it's stress. So what, like, and when you say stress, you mean like stress that like we put on ourselves, or like external stress and the impact that plays on our overall health, mood, all that sort? Is that, yeah.
Yeah. So I think all of it together. Yeah. You know?
So what are some common strategies that you may have like implemented or helped people work with that are like high stress? And maybe to make that more specific, maybe someone that's just stresses themselves out about the idea of like doing things, right? Or like, you know, adding stuff, putting stuff on their plate, or like maybe the idea of like paying attention to what they're eating, or, you know, whatever, that, like those sorts of things. And that might be like a negative thing, because like you said, not everyone, you can't treat everyone the same, right? Everyone's different.
Yeah. No, stress is like, I think it's a big one because it can affect so much. Like if you're stressed out, like your heart rate is already elevated. Like if you're stressed out, you might not make time to exercise. If you're stressed out, you might not make the best food choices. Like stress prevents you from like doing the things that help you live a healthy life. And I'm sure you're like very much well read in this, but there's the concept of like only focusing on the things you can control. You have like your circle of influence and then your circle of control. You know what I'm talking about, Mike? Mm-hmm. I forget who this comes from. But this is like one of the things of like, you realize that there are things in your life that you can control and there's things in your life that you can't control. And so like the first thing to do for stress is like recognize when the things that you can't control come up. Like if you're stuck in traffic, like at that very moment, like you cannot control that. Like the best thing you can do is send a text and be like, hey, I'm stuck in traffic, I'm gonna be late. That's what you can control. But otherwise, like there's no sense in getting stressed about being stuck in traffic, because at that point, like there's nothing in your control that'll change. Mm-hmm. Next time, like you can leave 5 minutes earlier, or like you can communicate with whoever you're trying to meet. But like traffic is not in your control. Like you shouldn't worry about it. Like letting little things like that build in your life is where like the stress comes from. So the more we can get rid of those stressors, the better. And like, there's always going to be work stress. I'm sure there's going to be family stress. Like there's general life stress that like is probably for everyone. But the things that are in your circle of influence, those are the things that I think are like worth worrying about, and everything else, you have to let it roll off your back.
Yeah. That's like what stoicism's all about. Is like focusing on what you can control. It's like what you said, it's like it's easier said than done. It's, you know, it's not easy, right? That's the big advice, is like it's not easy. So from my perspective, it's like if you can focus on, or if you can create some small wins and do that consistently, and then you talk about tying it together with habits and building good habits around how you manage stress. Because I think that, and something that I've learned, I don't know what your thoughts are, is that like the idea of like habits, when you're like, all right, let's develop some better habits. I think people's minds go to, okay, preparing my food, the habit of preparing my food, or the habit of getting up at 5 a.m., 6 a.m. to do the workout, like that. But there's also the habit of like you're changing your mental state. So the habit of, okay, when I get cut off in traffic, I normally flip the other person off, yell, scream, get really mad. That takes, 30 seconds, 45 seconds of my energy, and I'm fired up for the next 10 minutes. The habit of recognizing that like stimulus or that external thing that's causing you stress, having the awareness of it and the awareness to like, okay, like revert to some other emotion. The habit of like identifying the triggers of the emotions, and like that's like there's a habit as it relates to that in itself. So like kind of like what you're saying, like you were talking about earlier, like habits are the big thing. That in and of itself is creating good habits. And I agree with you. Now that you've kind of like talked about this, is I think stress is probably the biggest underrated component, because the idea we talked about, like out training a poor diet. Well, it's like you're stressed. Okay, well, I'll just work it out. I'll work off the stress, or I'll sleep off the stress. And that's not necessarily true. Like, yeah, we're all going to get stressed. However, the things that might stress us out, that we can actually control to some capacity by like developing better like habits or emotions around those things, can be a longer term. The longer term effect there is like less stress over time. Right. So
yeah, perfect. You're so good, Mike, at just putting all my ramblings into nice, coherent sentences.
Taking it all, just condensing it and tying all the good stuff together. It's good. So for anyone that's listening right now, this is like, there's a lot of good stuff that Sam has just talked about that I hope that we're thinking about. So maybe, no, I'll say this, Sam, you can give people one action point based on the stuff that we're talking about right now. What would that be?
Oh my gosh. Oh, I don't know.
Hard question, isn't it?
It is a hard question. One action. Set aside 10 minutes in your day for yourself.
10 minutes a day for yourself.
Yep.
Done. You guys hear that? 10 minutes a day for yourself. What can they do in those 10 minutes?
My favorite is just to go out for a walk on your own, because I feel like 95% of the members here are like either busy with families or like work. And so to take 10 minutes to just like do their own thing. And this is like probably the first thing I recommend to most of my clients. It's like, take 10 minutes a day. So for some people it's going out for a walk. Some people it's drawing or painting, doing something like artistic or creative. For some people it's like making a meal. Like some people use meal prep as a stress relief, and that's great. For some people it's coming into the gym. So no matter what it is, it's like that thing that you love to do it for 10 minutes a day.
10 minutes. I like that. That's great. That's great actionable advice. Now you got to build a habit around doing that. So put it in your calendar. Do it. Do it daily. Do it one day a week to start. If it's really, really hard for you, then build to 2 and stack those habits and do more and more and more of that. And then you'll start doing it every single day. Things will feel better. It takes time. It's not, there's no like magic, snap your fingers and things just work. It doesn't work like that.
No,
don't believe the internet, right?
No.
Don't believe the internet. All right, we're gonna get into the Spitfire round, because I feel like everyone's heads are gonna explode with all the knowledge that just got dropped. So Spitfire round, you should know these questions. So hopefully you prepared, because I haven't changed them. I'm gonna go out of order though. Favorite musician, band, or artist of all time, and if you could listen to one song the rest of your life, what would it be? I stole that question from one of your questions of the day.
So I don't think it's a secret. I love Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift, do you like her older stuff better? Yeah, the new stuff it's good. It's just a little sad sometimes. I like the peppy Taylor Swift. And my favorite song is "Landslide" by Fleetwood Mac. Like hands down, favorite song ever.
It's like, I think that's in Erin's like top 3.
Yeah, I asked that question and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I love that too." I was like, "Wow."
I'm pretty sure she danced to that song with her dad at her wedding. It was I think it was Landslide, and then from Landslide I went to Friend of the Devil by the Grateful Dead. It was like 2 songs, and then I started dancing. It was like, it was nice slow song. I'm sure Karen was crying, Erin's mom, and then I went into Grateful Dead and they were all singing, dancing. They got fun.
I love that.
Yeah. Favorite TV show and movie of all time, and what are you currently binge watching?
Okay, I'm not gonna go in order. I don't watch movies. Every time I try to watch a movie, I fall asleep like 20 minutes in. So I don't know. I couldn't even tell you, Mike, the last time I watched a movie. It doesn't end well for me. So I don't have a favorite movie, but I do have to say, if I'm picking a favorite rom-com, it would be 500 Days of Summer.
I don't know what that is.
I do not like The Notebook, so like that is not my style. But 500 Days of Summer would be favorite rom-com. Okay. We're going that direction. I'm not really binge watching anything. The thing I'm watching on TV right now is Big Brother, but I'm a couple episodes behind, so I got to catch up. So I will be binge watching that this weekend. And my favorite TV show of all time is Survivor. I'm like embarrassingly like a super fan, so obsessed with it. Like my dream is to be on the show. So yeah, that's my thing.
That's awesome. Big Brother, Survivor. You like the reality shows, what it sounds like.
But like only those two.
Only those two. Okay.
Yeah, no like Bachelor or anything like that for me. But like Survivor is it. I don't know. Fascinating to me.
It's a good show. It's been around for
I highly recommend everyone watch.
It's got to be like 20 years, 20 plus years now.
Yeah, they're starting season 41 on September 22nd.
41 years. Maybe not 41 years.
No,
41
there's
seasons.
2 every year. It's only been 21.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like 20. Yeah, it's about 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay, last question is favorite thing to do outside of the gym. What is your favorite hobby?
So I don't really have hobbies either. But I do when I'm not here, I'm at the pool. Like I like to teach swim lessons. That's like my thing when I'm not here is like life at the pool is it for me. I'm like never not there.
You're like a fish. So pool,
Yeah.
so pool time. It's not bad.
Yeah. No, it's a good thing. I like it.
It's a good thing. That's
I can't
awesome.
imagine like not doing it.
You got to do it. I mean, how long have you been swimming for? I didn't even ask that question. How long have you been swimming for?
I started swimming when I was 7 and then diving when I was 9. So over 20 years.
Wow. Yeah, you can't give that up. That's awesome.
No.
It's awesome. Well, Sam, we just talked for a while, and this is a lot of great stuff.
I'm sorry I went really long.
No, you don't be sorry. This is what we do. This is great. I appreciate it. The longer, the better. So Sam, I really appreciate you being on the community conversation today. Everyone that is listening, I appreciate you tuning in. Remember, every Monday we have a new community conversation to get your week started. So make sure you guys check us out on our YouTube page, on our Spotify platform, all streaming platforms. We have these on. So again, until next time, Sam, appreciate you being on again. And thank you so much.
Thank you. That was great.